In a quiet little town, years ago, the sound of newborn cries filled the hospital room as a young mother held her babies for the first time. They were twins, tiny, fragile, yet full of life. At first glance, they looked alike, the same button nose, the same small fingers curling around their mother's hand. But then came the difference that made everyone pause. One baby had skin as dark and rich as midnight, while the other's was pale, almost glowing in contrast. Nurses exchanged curious looks, neighbors whispered, and soon the entire town had something to talk about, the twins who looked so alike, yet so different. Some people stared in confusion, some in quiet judgment, wondering how such a thing could happen. The whispers grew louder in the days that followed, but in the middle of it all was their mother, holding her babies close with unwavering love. She didn't see a reason to question or explain. To her, they were perfect. With a tired but radiant smile, she silenced the murmurs with simple words that carried a weight of truth: "They are both my miracles." In that moment, the outside world's doubts and divisions meant nothing. What mattered was the bond of a mother and her children, a love unshaken by appearances. The twins' story had just begun, and though life would test them in ways no one could imagine, they started their journey wrapped not in the town's judgment, but in their mother's boundless love. As the twins grew older, their differences became harder for the world to ignore. At home, they were simply brothers, sharing toys, sneaking cookies from the kitchen, and laughing at the same silly jokes. Their mother raised them the same, teaching them kindness, respect, and the value of standing together. But the moment they stepped outside, the world reminded them that not everyone saw them equally. At school, the lighter-skinned twin was often praised for things both had worked on. Teachers gave him more attention, classmates invited him to sit at their tables, and strangers smiled at him in the grocery store. His brother, with darker skin, wasn't treated the same. He was sometimes left out of games, questioned about whether he was really the other's twin, and made to feel as if he didn't belong. One afternoon, after being pushed aside on the playground while his brother was chosen first, the darker-skinned twin sat quietly under a tree, his eyes full of questions. When his brother joined him, he whispered, "Why do they treat us so different, when we're the same?" For a moment, the lighter-skinned twin didn't know what to say. Then, taking his brother's hand firmly, he replied with all the determination of a child who understood more than most adults ever could, "Because the world doesn't see like we do. But I'll never leave you." In that promise, spoken on a playground bench, the foundation of their bond was sealed. Unshakable, unbreakable, and stronger than any judgment. As the twins stepped into their teenage years, the differences in how the world treated them grew sharper, almost unbearable. Both were bright, hard-working, and full of dreams. Yet opportunities didn't come to them equally. When the lighter-skinned twin applied for scholarships and summer programs, doors opened easily. Teachers recommended him, coaches encouraged him, and strangers seemed eager to help. Meanwhile, his brother, just as talented, just as determined, was overlooked again and again, as if his worth was invisible to the world. The injustice weighed heavily on them both. The darker-skinned twin never complained openly, but his silence carried a quiet pain. One evening, sitting on the porch after receiving another rejection letter, he finally turned to his brother. His voice was steady, though his eyes glistened with hurt. "You don't have to hold yourself back for me. Take the chances you're given. Don't lose your future because of what the world thinks of me." The lighter-skinned twin's heart ached. He wanted to fight, to refuse anything that didn't honor them both. But his brother's plea cut through, an act of sacrifice born from love. With tears threatening to fall, he clasped his brother's shoulder and whispered, "If I rise, I'll rise with you. I promise." That night, they hugged tightly, knowing life was pushing them in different directions. Neither spoke of it, but both felt it, the quiet fear that time and distance might test their bond. Yet in that moment, their promise to one another became a lifeline they would carry into the future. Years passed, and life carried the twins down very different roads. The lighter-skinned twin worked tirelessly, fueled by the promise he had once made on that porch. Through late nights of study and endless determination, he became a respected doctor, known not just for his skill but for the compassion he showed every patient. Yet even in his success, there was always an emptiness, a missing part of him, the brother who had quietly let go so he could rise. One rainy evening, as he left the hospital after a long shift, his eyes caught a figure huddled on the sidewalk. A man sat against a wall, clothes worn, face weathered by years of hardship. Something about him felt familiar. The doctor slowed, then stopped. When the man lifted his head, time seemed to freeze. It was his twin, older, thinner, tired beyond words, but unmistakably him. The doctor's heart broke. Kneeling on the wet pavement, tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "Brother, it's me." For a moment, the darker-skinned twin looked away, ashamed of what life had done to him. But then he felt warm arms around him, a voice steady with love, "I told you, if I rise, I'll rise with you. I'm here now." With that, he lifted his brother from the street and brought him home. No judgment, no hesitation. Only the fulfillment of a promise made long ago, proving that even after years apart, their bond had never been broken. Months passed, and slowly the darker-skinned twin began to heal, not just in body, but in spirit. With good food, a warm bed, and the unconditional love of his brother, the weight of the streets began to lift from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he stood tall again, no longer defined by struggle, but by the resilience that had carried him through. Side by side, the twins were whole once more. One evening, they were invited to speak at a community gathering. The room was filled with families, teachers, and children who had once whispered about them, the different-color twins. As the crowd waited, the darker-skinned brother stepped forward, his voice trembling at first, then steady with truth. "People used to look at us and only see our skin," he said. "One light, one dark. They thought that made us different. But my brother never believed that. When the world gave him chances and left me behind, he never let go of me. He proved that love is stronger than judgment, and that brotherhood is greater than any barrier." The lighter-skinned twin placed a hand on his brother's shoulder and added softly, "We were born different colors, yes. But what matters is that we've always been one heart." The crowd rose to their feet, some clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. And as the twins walked out together that night, hand in hand, they carried with them not the label the world once gave them, but the legacy of unbreakable love.